Well, the American dream has always included buying your own home, but recently it's been harder to check that off the list. And it's causing a lot of millennials and Gen Zers to regret becoming home buyers.
So we all know that in the last several months, a housing market, it really sucks. Especially hard hit are millennials and Gen Zers. I sat down the other day with a lender that I've used quite often. His name is Anthony Rhodes. We talked a little bit about how Gen Zers and millennials are hardest hit. We also talked a little bit about first-time home buyers and their issues. Take a look at it. If you have any questions, give me a call, send me a text. Be happy to talk with you. Let's get to that video.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Anthony Rhodes with A3 Mortgage, and I'm here with Mike LaVoy, Dalton Wade Realty.
Good afternoon.
A couple of the things that we've seen on the news here as of lately is that some of the younger people that have purchased homes in the last couple of years are now finding that there's more of a financial responsibility of owning a home. And the news was basically saying that they were selling a lot of the properties to get out of that responsibility. I don't know, Mike, are you seeing younger buyers shying away from buying properties for those reasons?
Yeah, they're putting it off longer. They're getting older. They're not buying at such a young age. A lot of those people, the Gen Zers and millennials that bought it when rates were at 3%, thinking it was a great deal. But they didn't include the increasing cost of insurance and taxes and everything else along with it. So now they're having a hard time being able to afford it. New people that are coming in are looking at the internet saying, insurance rates are ridiculous. Maybe we can't afford a house right now.
Yeah, I think that here in the state of Florida, that insurance has been such a hot button with a lot of hurricanes that we have and the floods. And I think that, in other areas of the country where your taxes and your insurance only increase just a little bit every year, here in Florida, we've seen huge increases in insurance. People that were paying $1,600, the following year, they're paying $3,500.
Agreed. And several states are like that. California's like that now. States in the middle of the country where the tornadoes are always getting hit, they're getting like that. But yeah, Florida, we lead the nation in insurance rates.
Yeah. I think another thing that a lot of the younger people were not really concerned with at first or educated to is the ongoing maintenance costs of a home.
Oh, agreed.
If you rent and your air conditioning blows out in the middle of August, you can just call your landlord and he will send somebody out to fix it. When you own your own home and that AC breaks,
it's yours, baby.
It is yours, and somebody's going to charge you, to fix it.
Sure.
If the summer comes along and there's a storm and you now have a leak in your roof, it's not just the roof that you have to, replace or repair. It's probably the drywall that came through with the leak and all of the other things that come along with that. And sometimes we find that it's cheaper to pay out of pocket than it is to just put it through your insurance.
Especially when you got a $5,000 to $10,000 deductible. You're just not going to make the insurance, so you got to pay for it yourself. And maintenance is not covered by insurance.
Right.
So that air conditioner, that hot water heater, that all that mechanical stuff is going to break. The machine is going to break down sooner or later. And a lot of people do not, especially first-time home buyers, don't figure in that they're going to have to spend 10% of the value of their house over a period of probably 2 or 3 years for maintenance.
Right. So I've also seen people say about when they rented, they could just come and go as they please, but when they own the home, now they have to cut the grass.
Yeah.
Or they have to maintain things when the plants die and flowers die. They just don't like maintaining that stuff.
And it's not cheap. It is not cheap. Owning a house is not cheap. It's a better way to do it than buying it than renting for the rest of your life, especially if you're long term. You're not going to be in a place for 7 to 10 years. But short term, year to year, it can't be expensive.
It does, and there is a financial investment there, but you are also building your equity in your home. You're building wealth by every time you make a payment. It's the best savings plan that you could possibly get.
I'm sure you've heard you can either pay your own mortgage, or pay your landlord's mortgage. You're going to pay a mortgage either way.
You're paying somebody.
They're paying somebody, and the cost of repairs, the cost of taxes, the cost of insurance is included in your rent payment. So as those taxes and interest go up, rent payment's gonna go up.
True.
And you're still, in the meantime, you're still paying off the guy's mortgage for him.
True. As far as other concerns that people have, I've always heard down payment and closing costs, mortgage interest rates, and then the fear of like financial instability. Like, I have a good job now and everything's great, but what if I lose my job? Can I afford?
Especially in the environment we're in today. I mean, my son just bought a house out in Denver. He worked for a national company, but a lot of this stuff, those parts come from international places. So the fear of losing your job is a definite thing.
Yeah. I kind of view things like whether you have a job or not, you still have to have a place to live.
You do.
You have to sleep at night. So
Yeah.
you can either pay somebody else's mortgage or you can pay your own.
Agreed.
But I will touch a little bit on down payment and closing costs. Yes, you can go into purchasing a home with 20% down to avoid mortgage insurance. You can go into purchasing a home with down payment assistance. You could go into a home with getting 100% financing and very minimal out of pocket. There are sellers that are willing to credit buyers' closing costs in some capacity. There are all kinds of creative ways to help people buy homes. And I think that a lot of people don't know about those out there. There's quite a few people that I talk to as first-time home buyers, and they say, I'm just not ready yet. I'm like, okay, well, what's holding you back? They're like, well, I really need to save some money. And I think, okay, well, the longer you wait to save that money, the more expensive things are becoming. Houses 5 years ago cost a lot less than they do today, and 5 years before that.
Well, and there's a saying that there's no better time to buy a house than 5 years ago.
Yes.
Because prices have gone up. And they've got to save up along that point. I think they do need to have a cushion outside of their down payment or closing costs. Because at some point in time, you're going to have to replace their refrigerator. So they need to have something on the side. But there are a lot of ways to get into a house with pretty much zero or very close to zero down.
That's why lenders require a couple months in reserve. Even if it's just in a 401k or any type of emergency savings, the what ifs happen. You really need to have that. If you were to lose your job, the lender knows that you at least have 2 or 3 months, in reserves payment while you try to obtain, new employment.
I think the other thing that first-time home buyers aren't told by their real estate agent is about taxes, especially here in Florida. If this is your first time buying a house in Florida and you buy it from a person that's owned that house for 20 years, they spend grandfathered at 3% increase in property values. So when they buy it, they're looking at the tax rules down. It says $2,000 for taxes. Next year, it's not going to be $2,000. It's going to jump up quite a bit.
That's correct.
So I think that's another issue for first-time home buyers. A lot of second-time home buyers, but definitely first-time home buyers are not told that that's going to come in there.
They are not. And one of the things that I get accustomed to, especially with working with Mike, that I will always go to the county tax assessor or the county property appraiser website and use that tax estimator based on the amount that they're purchasing the home, the $25,000 credit that they get for homestead.
Right.
And then it really does give a lot more of an accurate number. When they look at the current taxes and they go, oh, well, the taxes are only $3,200 this year. And then I hit them with the printout from the county that says next year it's going to be $7,100.
Right.
They're like, no, that doesn't make sense. But it does, because your taxes are based on the purchase price of that property.
And not everybody out there will do that. So it's, you might as well know now as to wait for 6 months and get it done, because then you're locked into it.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, fear of overpaying for a property. When the market is hot, everybody buys a house. When the market is low, everybody buys a house. And we've always kind of used that phrase, marry the property, date the rate. There's always a good time to buy a house. It's a matter of, in what you're trying to do, are you overpaying for your investment? Florida got a pretty bad rap for a while where a lot of people from up north were coming down with a lot of cash and buying properties sight unseen,
Right.
and paying $50,000 over value, over asking price, which kind of made local people unobtainable to purchase a home.
Definitely.
If the house was on the market for $310,000, they put in an offer at $310,000, and somebody would show up with $350 and give them cash.
And not have to worry about the appraisal.
Right.
And,
No inspections, no anything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where we're at now, where the market has kind of flipped from a seller's market to a buyer's market, now people can get better deals on properties, as there's a lot more inventory available. Properties are sitting on the market for a little bit longer than they were at one time. But now, I don't think that overpaying is really something that people should be concerned with. I think there's a lot of deals out there now, and I think working with a good realtor, that person will navigate you through that process.
Very true. Right now, times we're talking about in COVID times, we had a 2-day supply of houses on the market. Now we're about 6 months. So it's definitely turned into a better market for buyers. Sellers are, because the houses are staying in the market so long, sellers are willing to make a deal and talk price and talk a good price. Now, they're not coming down 30%, but they are coming down 6, 8, 10% of their list price to make the deal close because they want to sell the house and move on. If it's in a nice neighborhood or it's a very nice house, it may not come down a lot more. But if the house has been on the market for 60, 90, 180 days, a lot more have to talk about prices now.
Absolutely. And what that also does is it opens up the flexibility for the seller to either pay some of the buyer's closing costs in negotiation, or, and even better, put some of that money towards buying the rate down.
Yeah.
If the rates are hovering around the 6s and you can buy it down into the high 4s or 5s because the seller's willing to contribute, $10,000 of buy down or a combination of closing costs and buy down, it works out great for the buyer. They get a lower payment and they are also getting a lower price on the property, which at that point, they're getting into a property and for a lot less than they would have.
Oh yeah, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Oh yeah, and the seller's happy because they obviously they're selling the house for a reason. They're not just selling it for grants. They're ready to get rid of it. They want to sell it, so they're happy.
Right. Well, we're gonna do a series of these videos in hopes to help educate some of the people that are watching. The process of buying a home doesn't need to be as stressful as some people think it is. Purchasing a home should be a fun process, and I think with some of the things that Mike and I will be discussing, you will learn that there's a lot of information out there, and if you start Googling, you'll go down a bunch of rabbit holes. But I think that we can kind of put some of those stresses to ease. But I'm Anthony with A3 Mortgage.
Mike LaVoy with Dalton White Real Estate.
See you guys soon.
Thanks.